75 years ago today, on Windrush Day, 22nd June 1948, over 1,000 passengers disembarked off the Windrush ship, which was docked at Tilbury in Essex, and that transformed Britain forever. It wasn't just simply those passengers on the ship, there were other ships. A lot of people came in the intervening years between 1948 up to the 70s from the Caribbean, but also people came from Africa and other parts of the Commonwealth and Southeast Asia and Europe to contribute to make a difference to Britain. That is why I've campaigned for many years for a National Windrush Day to acknowledge the contribution of the Windrush pioneers and for us to really celebrate the contribution of migration to Britain. Unfortunately, Windrush Day is also mixed with the ongoing saga of the Home Office hostile environment scandal, which has plagued the lives of thousands of people up and down the country, and especially those residents. The Windrush scandal has plagued the lives of thousands of men and women and their families up and down the country, losing their homes, jobs, being deported, threatened deportation. That is why Windrush Day is bittersweet. It's bitter because of the ongoing injustice, the compensation scheme failing, the government not recognising people's physical and mental health needs. But we have to recognise that it's also about commemoration of the contribution of the Windrush generation to Britain. That's why we need to campaign for the compensation scheme to remove from the Home Office, for the compensation scheme to really meet the needs of the Windrush survivors so they can move on with their lives. And also we have to recognise that there are people who have been deported over the last few years who should be here back in the UK with their loved ones. So let's acknowledge this injustice, but also at the same time commemorate and say to the Windrush generation who are still alive, thank you for your contribution, especially in Hackney. You've made a difference. We honour you and we salute you.
For me, Windrush Day is a time for us to reflect and also celebrate the good work, the great work that our relatives contributed into this country when they first arrived here. I know for me, I always think of the stories my grandparents used to tell me when they first arrived in this country during the Windrush period. Although they are not from the Caribbean, I'm from a Nigerian background. They were one of the many people who came from the Commonwealth countries. My grandma worked in the NHS all her life, and that continued down to my mother as well, who also worked in the NHS for a long time. So for me, there's a sense of gratitude and also an appreciation for the impact that my family has had, particularly working in the public sector.
Thank you to those that did take up the call and come in that generation that we now identify as the Windrush to come and help build back Britain. Yes, some people may have taken the opportunity to build a better life, but there was a comprehensive call out. We needed nurses, doctors, midwives, train drivers, people in other areas of transport, manufacturing, engineers, and many people came and left their families. In some cases, it was the cream of the crop that left communities and came to this country, and in many cases faced incredible discrimination based on their race. Sadly, 75 years later, there is a legacy of this history of racial discrimination, institutional racism. Some cases, it's been most violent consequences. So I think part of remembering Windrush is that we should still be tackling and challenging institutional racism. We should be fighting for equality. And also those people that came post-war, who we see as the Windrush generation, are also descendant of those that, in many cases, 300 years ago, were enslaved Africans. We cannot deny this history. The contribution that people of African descent have given to this country is formidable for centuries. The least we could do is treat people with respect. So thank you to those that are part of that generation, and I appreciate your time to take a moment to respect that and think about what that entailed and how we move forward in the future.
Windrush Day is not Black history, it is British history. It is a history entwined in the fabric of British life, resulting in a transformative experience for the whole of British society. While it is often centered on the contribution of the generation that fought in the Second World War, that while facing racism at every turn filled resulting employment gaps, playing a fundamental part in rebuilding and reshaping our country, alongside those that took up roles in our NHS and other areas of public service, we must also recognise that, particularly in Hackney, the legacy of Windrush communities now extends to every part of our lives, from industry, politics, academia, through to the arts. Despite a recorded presence in our country which extends to almost 2,000 years, the recognition of Windrush Day ultimately plays a part in providing us with the means to contemporise the role of the Black experience in Britain. Likewise, the injustices this generation faced now extending to their children and grandchildren. Whilst we celebrate what the Windrush generation has provided our country with, we undoubtedly have to recognise that within this, there is also a need for us to collectively acknowledge that this is also a wider call for social justice and equity amid an ever-increasing hostile environment and a sense for many Black and global majority communities that not much has changed.
I wish I knew how it would feel to be free. I wish I could break all the chains holding me. I wish I could say all the things that I should say. Say 'em loud, say 'em clear, for the whole wide world to hear.